So, good morning, welcome back to the mock exam paper number 1. In our first session, we discuss 50 mark questions in your paper, question number 3, which is based on pre-seen and the unseen. Today I am going to discuss the balance part, question number 1 and 2, which carry 25 mark each. So, first of all, we will start with the question number 1. I hope you have the paper. Question number 1, so first of all, we will try to identify the requirement. With that one in our mind, we can go through the scenario given. So, required part A, compare and contrast the leadership styles of Mr. Bimal Ranatunga and Mr. Ajit Perra and recommend the most appropriate leadership style to the MD based on appropriate leadership model. 7 marks. If you look at about this question, this is very familiar question in CA exam. If you go through the past papers related with the business value creation subject, you will find so many similar questions. So, what the examiner is trying to do here is to explain two different leadership scenarios and ask you to pick the appropriate leadership style appropriate for the given scenario. So, in this case, he has given leadership style of 2 guys and asks you to identify what is the most appropriate leadership style, right. So, you just compare, first of all, you have to identify what is the style applied by these 2 gentlemen, then you have to compare and identify the difference between these 2 leadership style. Then the next thing you have to do is recommend the most appropriate leadership style. That should be done based on the theoretical knowledge you have acquired within the classroom. Sometimes the 2 style applied by these 2 guys may not be the best style. With your theoretical knowledge, you have to suggest the most appropriate leadership style. And this is not a difficult question. You can do this very easily. Then part B, analyze the prevailing organization culture of Sky Garment Limited based on an appropriate cultural model. So, here you have to identify what type of culture exists at the Sky Garment Limited by using the appropriate cultural model you have learned. Again, this is very familiar question in CA. You can find out a few questions in previous syllabus related with this. Right. Then C, propose a suitable employee motivation program to the company in order to improve the performance of the employee employees by using an appropriate motivation model. Here you have to use your theoretical knowledge. Then D, suggest an appropriate way of changing the prevailing organizational culture based on an appropriate change management model. So, suggest an appropriate way of changing the prevailing organizational culture based on an appropriate change management model. So, here again you have to use your knowledge regarding the change management. For example, you can use Curtin-Levin 3-stage model that has also been tested few times in previous exam. So, there are 4 parts. The total mark allocation is 25 marks. So, here you have to give more attention on the action verb given. I am not going to discuss different action verb here. I assume you have a good knowledge on this. So, that is one of the skill I think you have to develop during your study period, right. So, if you look at about these questions, he has used different action verb, the compare and contrast, recommend, analyze, propose, then he has used suggest. So, you should have a thorough understanding about this action verb use, right. So, first of all, we will go through the questions. Sky Garment Limited is in textile industry which produce ladies and gents intimates and supplies to the domestic market through fashion retail outlet. So, they are in the textile industry, they manufacture garments and they supply them to the domestic market through fashion retail outlets. So, that means they are not sending them into overseas market. So, they are operating only in the domestic market. So, that is one of the information you have to keep in your mind. The company commenced its activities in early 90s as a result of the endurance and perseverance of Mr. Bimal Ranatunga, who is the current owner and the managing director of the Sky Garment Limited. So, they have started their activities in 1990s. The factory is situated at the heart of the city of Horana. So, factory is situated in Horana. Mr. Ranatunga has started this business as a small venture and he was able to take it to the current stage which generate rupees 15 million revenue per month. Initially he started this one as a small venture, but now they have developed that one into a larger one, averagely 15 million revenue per month. However, the sensor, now if you look at about the information up to now, so that is very common in any case study questions. You want to give some introduction about this particular organizations. So, here the few sentences were allocated for that purpose. However, since the business is expecting to expand its operation, he has realized that some of the decision making should be delegated to other managers. Now, he is trying to expand the business activities. He has recognized that it is right time to delegate decision making to other managers. So, up to now he may have taken most of the decision in the company. Now, he has realized same thing can't be done furthermore with the size of the business at present. Accordingly, Mr. Ajit Perera was appointed as the head of marketing. So, now a new guy is appointed, Mr. Ajit Perera, as head of marketing and delegated full authority to handle all marketing activities of the business. He has given the power to handle all the marketing activities. Mr. Ranatunga is known to make decision on his own. Now, look at now he is going to explain the leadership style of the Mr. Ranatunga now. And I am sure subsequently he may come up with some information regarding the Ajit Perera also. If you look at about the part A of the questions, it raises the questions compare and contrast the leadership style of Mr. Bimal Ranatunga and Mr. Ajit Perran recommend the most appropriate leadership style to the MD based on appropriate leadership model. Right. We look at about the information given about leadership style also. Mr. Ranatunga is known to make, who is Mr. Ranatunga? He is the founder owner, no? Mr. Ranatunga is known to make decision on his own. That means he take decision alone, he is not consulting others, expecting compliance from his staff. So, when he has taken decision, he expect staff members to adhere to his instructions. His only objective is to achieve result. He is more target oriented and he virtually ignores subordinate need. So, he is not worried about the subordinates needs. We look at the facts given here. We look at about this task orientation and the people orientations. He is more toward task orientation or people orientations, and normally he is more toward the task orientations. On the other hand, Ajit makes decision after discussing with his team and he is open to their suggestion, based on which he change his own decision if needed. But if you look at the Ajit, normally before taking decision he discuss with the subordinate, and if there is requirement to his own decision, he will do it. He is attentive to staff needs, he is giving more attention to the need of the staff and has developed satisfying relationship with his subordinate, right. So, if you look at about him, he is giving more attention on to the needs of the staffs, right. So, however, he pay little attention to achieving result. Now, see, he is giving more information for you to pick the leadership style. Now, he say the case itself identify that Ajit is giving more attention to the needs of the staff members. At the same time, he is add another sentence and he say how he pay little attention to achieving result. That means he is fully focused on the task, right. Sorry, he is fully focused on the staff members need, but not giving much attention to the task he is having, right. So, therefore, you have to carefully identify the leadership style given in the scenario, right. So, now we can answer for the part A actually. Question number 1, part 1 can be answers. So, what is the model you can use, right. I feel it is better to use the managerial grit, right. So, anyway, so we will check whether further more information is given related to the same, but it is clear actually from the information given. Now, we can pick actually, right. Then the company has 370 employees, and from that most of employees are floor workers and sales staff who based on the field. Now, he is giving more information about the employee base of the organization. How many employees they have? 370 employees. Even though several functional managers handle the different production functions, most of the important decisions related to employee activities are made by the MD himself, right. See, so per the informations, this guy is not consulting others, he take most of the decision in the company. And it has happened continuously for a long time as a practice. However, he does not directly involve in the activities of the marketing department, and he is expecting to achieve the sales target only, but he is not involving in the marketing activities. He is only expecting to achieve the sales target only. The annual bonus allocation for all the employees decided by the MD. See, this guy alone take the decisions how to be allocate the bonus with his own perspective, completely based on the production and sales target which are achieved by the employees. Based on the target achieved, he decide how much the bonus should be paid. HR manager or any functional manager cannot influence on his decision. So, this guy take the decisions alone. At the performance review meeting, MD pointed out that the marketing department has not been able to achieve the sales target during the last year. So, they have failed to achieve the sales target during last year, and he directly pointed out Mr. Ajit saying he is not a good leader. He directly point out Mr. Ajit saying he is not a good leader. That being the head of marketing. On the other hand, HR manager point out that the employee turnover rate of the factory workers are relatively high and difficult to recruit new labor to the factory. So, what has happened now, many people started to leave the organizations. He further noted that most of the factory workers have less than 1 year experience and most of them could not achieve the production target during the last year. So, most of people are new to the organization, what may be the contributor factor. So, people join, but leave within short period of time. They are not willing to stay so long. That means something wrong with the company itself. After the performance review meeting, Mr. Ranatunga realized that something goes wrong in the company and external consultant support will be needed to solve the prevailing issues. Now, so after the performance review meeting, what he has realized that something wrong with the company and he need to get a help of a external consultant to solve the problem. The external consultant observed that there are some problem associated with the leadership style of managers, motivation of employees and organizational culture. Further, he realized that the organizational culture should be immediately changed in order to revamp the organizational performance. If you look at the last para, also relevant for the questions is limited. He want to develop a scenario. As a aid, he has used this para. The following areas need to be addressed by you. Right. Part A required compare and contrast leadership style of Mr. Ranatunga and Mr. Ajit Perra and recommend the most appropriate leadership style to the MD based on the appropriate leadership model, 7 marks. So, we will look at about theory perspective also little bit on this. If you look at about the leadership style of these two guys, leadership style of Mr. Bimal Ranatunga is task oriented, then leadership style of Mr. Ajit Perra, what do you think? It's a country club, in other words people oriented, right? Right. So, first of all we have some sort of understanding about the Blake and Mountain managerial grid also. If you remember the theory knowledge you have acquired, this Blake and Mountain managerial grids in there, what these two gentlemen try to do, they try to identify leadership style based on two main criteria. One is concern for people, other one is concern for productions. So, here the concern for people mean how much you are giving to you are giving attention to the needs of the people. Then concern for production mean how much attention is given to the need of the task in your hand. So, what he has done is he tried to identify combination of these two. He identified 9 options under each variable. Here 1 means the lowest concentration level, 9 means the highest concentration level. When you go along with the x axis, so y axis, the attention level is increased. So, if you look at about this 9 into 9, how many leadership style we can identify? 81 leadership style can be identified. 81 leadership style, but he explained only 5 leadership style. He defined only 5 leadership style, not all the 81 leadership style. It's not practical to describe 81 leadership style, no. So what he has done is he identified 1.1, 1.9, then 9.1, 5.5, then 9.9 leadership style. So if you look at about the 1.1, that was identified as impoverished leadership style. Impoverished leadership style. So what is the meaning of this impoverished leadership style? This is the most weakest leadership style. If you look at about this attention level on the task in your hand is at the minimum level. You are giving the poorest attention to the task in hand. At the same time, concern for people is also very weak. සේවකෝ ගැන හිතන්නෙත් නැහැ, නිෂ්පාදන ගැන හිතන්නෙත් නැහැ. බොහෝම දුර්වල නායකත්ව ශෛලියක්. This is very weak leadership style. Then if you look at about the task 9.1, here you are given highest attention to the task in your hand, but poorest attention to the needs of the people. කාර්ය පිළිබඳව උපරිමයේ හිතනවා, හැබැයි සේවකයන්ගේ අවශ්‍යතාවයන් පිළිබඳව බොහොම ආම විදිහට තමයි අවධානය යොමු කිරීමක් කරනු ලබන්නේ. Right? That is called task oriented leadership style. Then country club, it's opposite of task oriented. In there, full attention is given to the concern of the people, but lowest attention is given to the concern for productions. From employee point of view, this one is a fantastic leader. Is a good, but management point of view, owner's point of view, is a very weak leader, since is not giving much attention to achieve the organizational objectives. And the next one is middle road leadership style. You have learned that one also, middle road leadership style. So you are in between. That's not the best, but half a attention level is given on both people and the production. Then 9.9, fullest attention on both production and the people. What is the most appropriate leadership style? Team leadership style is the most appropriate one. Right. So we look at about the needs of the questions also. Compare and contrast the leadership style of Mr. Bimal Ranatunga and Mr. Ajit Perra and recommend the most appropriate leadership style. Right. First of all, you have to identify what is the leadership style of Bimal Ranatunga and Mr. Ajit Perra. Then you have to come up with the best, you have to come up with a suggestion as the most appropriate leadership style. Right. So we have gone through the facts given. If you look at about leadership style of Ranatunga, is not consulting others when he is taking decision. He take decision by himself, and his only objective is to achieve result, and he virtually ignores subordinate need. Very clear, no? His only objective is to achieve result, and he virtually ignores subordinate need. So in this one, so give full attention to the need of the work. Subordinate needs are ignore. So what type of leadership style is applied by him? Task oriented leadership style. So you have to clearly tell the reason also, since he is focusing fully on achieving the result, and he ignore about the needs of the subordinate. He is applying task oriented leadership style. Then on the other hand, Ajit makes decision after discussing with his team, and is open to their suggestion, based on which he change his own decision if needed. And this is more, he is more democratic leader, right? He is attentive to staff need. clearly given, is giving more attention to staff need, and he has developed satisfying relation with his subordinate. However, he pays little attention to achieving result. So that's a weakness. He pay little attention to achieving result. He is not giving much emphasis on the achievement of the requirement of the needs of the organizational targets. Right, he pay little attention to achieving result, but more focus is given on the employee needs. If you look at about this model, so more attention to needs of the people, but low attention to the requirement of the organization tasks, should be country club. So it's very clear, it should be country club. So leadership style of Mr. Bimal Ranatunga is task orientations. The leadership style of Mr. Ajit Perera is country club. So then there is another suggestion you have to make. What is the most appropriate leadership style? If you look at about the theory part we have learned, so what is the best leadership style? Should be team. Country club or task is not the best. Team, you have to suggest they should become team oriented leader, right? You have to tell that the most appropriate leadership style is the team leadership style, where full attention is given on both task and the people. So you have to come up with that particular suggestion also. Right, we will look at about what the examiners say in the marking scheme also. So how many marks allocate on this? 7 marks. So 7 to 6 mark can be given under what scenario? Show excellent understanding of different leadership style, to compare and contrast leadership style of Mr. Bimal Ranatunga and Mr. Ajit Perera, and recommend the most appropriate leadership style to MD by using managerial grid or any situational leadership theory. I say managerial grid or any situational leadership theory. So we discuss managerial grid and we suggest the appropriate one. Then what is the other scenario which can exceed? Good attempt, 5 to 4 marks. Compare and contrast some aspect of the leadership style of Mr. Bimal Ranatunga and Mr. Ajit Perera, and recommend the most appropriate leadership style to MD without making the reference to managerial grid or any situational leadership theory. You just talk about the leadership style. For example, you can say that Bimal Ranatunga is applying more task-oriented leadership style, and Ajit Perera is applying more people-oriented leadership style. But both are not good, so therefore they should give full attention on the both variable, like that, but without applying a proper leadership model. Then you can get 5 to 4 marks. 3 to 2, discuss some differences of the leadership style of Mr. Bimal Ranatunga and Mr. Ajit Perera, and no other recommendation. You are not suggesting the best leadership style. You just talk about the leadership style of both without using a model. Poor attempt 1 to 0, insufficient and poor attempt, but some point can be applied to identify the leadership style of 2 managers. 0, very poor attempt, explanation is not focused for the scenario. You just talk about something else. Right, then we will move to the part B of the questions. Analyze the prevailing organizational culture of Sky Garment Limited based on an appropriate cultural model. Prevailing organizational culture of Sky Garment Limited based on an appropriate cultural model. Right. Here you just want to identify the appropriate organizational culture, no? The prevailing organizational culture by using appropriate cultural model. So, if you go through the facts given, what are the points we can consider? This is family oriented business, right. Here culture, some information is given. For example, Mr. Ranatungi is known to make decision on his own, expecting compliance from his staff, right. This guy similar to autocratic leader, right. This guy take by himself. Further, his only objective is to achieve result and he virtually ignores subordinate need. Right. Those are some of the information regarding culture. Later also we found some informations. Here if you look at about most of the important decisions related to the employee activities are made by the MD himself. That means authority is not delegated, no, authority is kept with him, and it has happened continuously for a long time as a practice. Then even this performance targets also, right, the bonus on performance target also decided by himself, he decide how much the bonus should be given. So, we can use some cultural model, right. I prefer to use Handy's classification of organizational culture. That is much easier to use. Handy's classification of organizational culture. So, according to Handy, there are 4 different type of cultures exist within the organizations. Exit with different organizations. So, what are the different cultures? One is power culture, that is one type of culture. Power is considered the center of the organization and is held by one individual or a small group of senior managers. There are few formal rules for the organization, very little bureaucracy. So, what do you think this power culture? So, decisions are taken by one or few individuals, that means power is considered at the center of the organizations and they have only few formal rules and very little bureaucracy. They do not have much rules and regulations. It seems to be right, this organization is also having a similar culture to this, no, right. Then role culture, authority for decision making delegated, here it has not happened. Jobs and responsibilities are clearly defined, there are formal rules and procedures. The next one, task culture, project teams are formed to solve particular problems. Here teams are formed to solve the problems. Power and authority of individual come from their expertise and knowledge and their ability to perform particular tasks for the project team. Right. Normally, power and authority of individual come from their expertise and knowledge and their ability to perform particular tasks for the project team. So, not come from the job position, it come from the job knowledge. Power come from the job knowledge. Personal culture, individual believe themselves to be superior to the organization. The organization exists to serve their interest. Another example of a personal culture is the personal retinue that serve an important individual such as a movie star. So, in this type of culture, individual believe themselves to be superior to the organization. They believe that they are more powerful than the organizations. The organization exists to serve their interest, right. Another example of personal culture is the personal retinue that serve an important individual such as a movie star. So, if you look at about the 4 different culture which can be exist within the organizations, some of the informations given here is more related with the power culture. Why I am saying like that? Right. If you look at about 2 main point, look at one is power is concentrated at the center of the organization point, each match. Some example I have expressed some example. even though several functional managers handle the different production function, most of the important decisions related to employee activity are made by the MD himself, and it had happened continuously for a long time as a practice. It's clearly show within this organization power is centered with the MD. Then few formal rules, the annual bonus, I have extracted some point from the case itself. The annual bonus allocation for all the employees is decided by the MD with his own perspective, completely based on the production and sales target which are achieved by the employee. He decides. There is no formal definitions how it should be done. HR manager or any functional manager cannot influence these decisions. So, these point indicate this organization is having power culture. So, what I have done is I look at about the two main features of the power culture, whether power is centralized, then second one is the few formal rules, then I found the facts to prove that. So, therefore, we can come to a conclusion that this organization is having a power culture. Now, what is the next part of the questions? Part C, propose a suitable employee motivational program to the company in order to improve the performance of the employee by using an appropriate motivation model. Propose a suitable employee motivation program to the company in order to improve the performance of the employees by using an appropriate motivation model. So, how to address this part? Something wrong with the organization, examiner is asking you to come up with a suitable model. So, if you look at about theory aspect, you have learned two different type of leadership, two different type of motivational theories, content theories and process theories. Here you can pick one of the leadership, one of the motivational theory to address this issue. I prefer to use Herzberg two-factor theory. So, one option is to use Maslow's hierarchy of needs, but it is very tough to apply here, but I prefer to use the next one, Maslow's Herzberg two-factor theory. So, what are the lacking point here? If you look at about the scenario, look at about the last para given. So, what they are telling about this? After the performance review meeting, Mr. Anatunga realized that something goes wrong in the company and external consultant support will be needed to solve the prevailing issues. The external consultant observed that there are some problems associated with leadership style of managers, motivation of employees and organization culture. Further, he realized that organization culture should be immediately changed in order to revamp the organizational performance. Right. Here, so what are the issues in this scenario? So, one of the issues is employee turnover rate of the factory workers are relatively high, very difficult to recruit people. So, if you look at about the scenario given, the most of the decisions are taken by MD himself, there is no freedom to employees. Then even the bonus is decided by himself. There are no clear defined performance appraisal systems. So, these are some of the facts we can consider, right, when you are trying to suggest a particular theory which can be applied in the given scenario. So, one theory you can use is Herzberg two-factor theory. If you look at the Herzberg two-factor theory, Herzberg identify two factors that affect to the motivation level of the employees. One is hygiene factors, other one is motivator factors. Then hygiene factors, look at the hygiene factors, these hygiene factors can create dissatisfactions in the individual if the individual needs are not met, but they are not motivating the individuals. Then motivator factors, these lead to the fulfillment at work, and these normally cover factors like challenging work, career advancement, sense of achievement, recognition from bosses and colleagues, responsibility and pay, right. These are some of the things. So, what is the conclusion you can make? So, we can say that in this scenario, some of the hygiene factors are met, but motivator factors are not met. For example, you can assume that they are paid well, right. So, that is okay, but motivator are lacking. For example, this recognition from bosses and colleagues is not there, no. See, if you look at about the scenario, this guy accused that sales guy as not good, no, in front of others, no recognitions, then there is no delegation of work, right, to the people. So, motivator factors are lacking here. Right. So, therefore, so what I have to suggest here is, so in these organizations, Herzberg two-factor theory can be used. These hygiene factors are met to some extent, but most of the motivator factors are not met. Therefore, so what they have to come here is delegation of authority, that should be one of the options. Then clear defined performance target, and incentive scheme. If someone achieve that particular target, then they are eligible for the defined incentive, right. In that scenario, GM will not decide what is the best way of allocating the incentives. When the defined scheme is there, people can hit that one and then they can get the incentives. Then responsibility can be given to the employees, right. So, that is my suggestion on this. So, we will look at what the examiner is telling on this. Six to 5 marks. Propose the steps and strategies of a suitable employee motivation program to match with the prevailing situation of the company by adapting to need hierarchy theory. That is one theory you can use, right. Hierarchy of needs theory or two-factor theory or any other appropriate motivation model, right. You can use one of the model. Here I went with the two-factor theory, but if you want you can use hierarchy of needs theory also, but I prefer to use the two-factor theory. 4 to 3 mark. Recommend some motivational strategy based on an appropriate motivational model without clearly discussing steps of motivational program. You are not talking about the theory model properly, you just come up with the motivational strategies. Then 2 mark, propose some motivational strategy without following an appropriate motivational model. 1 insufficient and 4 attempt, but propose some action to motivate employees. 0 weak analysis and relevant to the given task. That's a weak analysis and relevant to the given task. Right. We'll look at about the questions. See, what is the conclusion we can make on based on examiner answer also. First of all, we explain the Herzberg two-factor theory, right. Then in this scenario, you say that most of we can assume most of the hygiene factors, right. Most of the hygiene factors are available in the given scenario. For example, we can assume that this right proper working conditions, job security and right good salaries available, but most of the motivative factors are not available. For example, no challenging work, no clearly defined incentive scheme based on performance, then no delegation of authority. You have to tell about that, and you have to say that the particular motivation scheme should cover those aspects. In other words, motivator factor should be mainly covered in the motivational programs. Right, then we'll move to the part D, last part. Suggest an appropriate way of changing the prevailing organizational culture based on an appropriate change management model. Suggest an appropriate way of changing the prevailing organizational culture based on an appropriate change management model. So, what a change management model you can use in the given scenario? You can use this Curtin-Levy 3-stage model, or you can use Kotter's 8 steps model. But application of Kotter is tough, since you have to write about 8 steps. It's much convenient to apply the 3 steps model of Kurt-Lewin's. So, we look at about theory aspect also on this. So, change and change management, business organization operate in a rapidly changing environment and marketplace. To remain successful, they must adapt by respond to the changes and taking advantage of any strategic opportunity that may arise. When major changes are required, they will often by strong resistance from employees and the existing culture of the organizations. Lewis identified 3 steps model for change. So, what are the 3 steps? Unpraise, then movement, then the reprise. Right. If you remember the model, the first one is unpraise. So, these 3 steps model, if we try to draw this one. So, starting point is unpraise, then the change of the movement, then the next one is reprise. There are 3 stages. Here the starting point is unpraise. Unpraise mean what is freeze? Freeze කියලා කියන්නේ අපි මේ ඝන වෙලා තියෙන ice බවට පත් වෙලා තියෙන එකක් නේ. දැන් අපි ආයතනයේ සංස්කෘතිය ගත්තොත් එහෙම මේක කාලයක් තිස්සේ නිර්මාණය වෙච්ච දෙයක්. දැන් මේක ප්‍රබල විදිහට එකට ඇදිලා තියෙන්නේ. ඇඳිලා තියෙන්නේ ප්‍රීෆ්ස් වෙලා තියෙන්නේ. යම් යම් දේවල් කාලයක් තිස්සේ ආකාර කරන් ඇවිල්ලා ඒක මේ ප්‍රබල විදිහට ආයතන තුල එස්ටැබ්ලිෂ් වෙලා තමයි තියෙන්නේ. For an example, if I take an example, දැන් උදාහරණයක් විදිහට අපි හිතමු මෙහෙම දැන් අයිස් ඝන එතන අයිස් කුට්ටියක් ගත්තොත් එහෙම මෙහෙම අයිස් කුට්ටිය ඝන බවට පත් වෙලා තියෙන්නේ. තීරණ ගන්න ක්‍රමේ කාලයක් තිස්සේ අපි පාවිච්චි කරලා තියෙන උදාහරණයක් විදිහට. ඊට පස්සේ ගත්තොත් එහෙම ආයතනය තුල සේවකයෝ හැසිරෙන විදිය යම් විදිහට තමයි කාලයක් තිස්සේ කරලා තියෙන්නේ. ඒක එකට කාලයක් තිස්සේ කරලා මේක එස්ටැබ්ලිෂ් වෙලා තියෙන ආයතන තුල. මේ විදිහට මේක ඝන වෙලා තියෙන්නේ යම් යම් දේවල් ආයතන තුල ක්‍රියාවලින් ප්‍රබල විදිහට ආයතන තුල එස්ටැබ්ලිෂ් වෙලා තියෙන්නේ. So the first thing is you have to challenge this one, unfreeze, right? දැන් මේ දැන්ට තියෙන එක අපි මේක දිය කළා යවන්න ඕනේ, right? අපි වෙනසක් හඳුනලා දෙන්න හදද්දී when we try to introduce some change, automatically resistance will come, right? So here under the unfreeze resistance will come, right? That's the normal behavior of the people. What you have to do is normally we can apply two strategies here, right? One is to strengthen driving forces, then other one is weaken restraining forces. Strength driving forces and weaken restraining force. දැන් අපි වෙනසක් හඳුන්වලා දෙද්දි මේ විරෝධය දක්වන කණ්ඩායම ඉන්නවා. අපි මේ කණ්ඩායමත් එක්ක ගනුදෙනු කරද්දී අපිට උපායමාර්ග දෙකක් අනුගමනය කරන්න පුළුවන්. එකක් තමයි අපිට මේකට කැමැත්තක් ඉන්න කට්ටියක් ඉන්නවා. දැන් උදාහරණයක් තරුණ කට්ටියක් ඉන්න පුළුවන් මේ සංස්කෘතිය හරියන්නේ නැහැ. අපි මේ කාලයත් එක්ක වෙනස් වෙන්න ඕනේ. අපි මේවා වෙනස් කරන්න ඕනේ කියලා ඉන්න පොඩි කණ්ඩායමක් ඉන්න පුළුවන්. උදාහරණයක් විදිහට තමයි අර තරුණ කණ්ඩායම මම හඳුනගත්තේ. අන්න ඒ අයව අපි තවදුරටත් strengthen කරන්න ඕනේ. ඒ අයව අපි encourage කරන්න ඕනේ. So strengthen driving forces. Then another one is the weaken restraining forces. ඒ වගේම තව ඉන්නවා ගෲප් එකක්. උදාහරණයක් විදිහට ආයතන තුල කාලයක් තිස්සේ හිටපු අර එක්ස්පීරියන්ස් කිප දෙනෙක් ඉන්න පුළුවන්. මේවා හරියන්නේ නැහැ. මේක හරියන්නේ නැහැ. මේක ෆේල් වෙනවා. ඕවා හරියන්නේ නැහැ. අපි මේ කරපු විදිය හොඳයි කියන කණ්ඩායමක් ඉන්න පුළුවන්. අන්න ඒ අයව අපි දුර්වල කරන්න ඕන. Weaken restraining forces. For an example, right? So you can use both positive and negative actions, right? කරදරමකාරයෙක් ඉන්නවා නම් එහෙම ටිකක් ඈතට කොහේ හරි මාරු කරලා දාලා එහෙම ඇක්ෂන් එකක් ගන්න පුළුවන්, right? So that the first thing you have to do, right? Unfreeze this movements, this change mean here we try to introduce the change, right? අලුත් දේවල් අපි වෙනස්කම් ටික මෙතන තමයි අපි හඳුන්වා දීමක් සිදු කරනු ලබන්නේ. This is the second stage. Then reprise mean now so we have introduced some new changes. We have to make sure that these new changes become permanent, right? Normally people behavior is to reverse back to the old habits. To avoid that you have to replace this. උදාහරණයක් විදිහට අපි changes ටික හඳුන්වලා දුන්නාට පස්සේ දැන් අලුත් ආයතනේ මෙන්න මේ වගේ රවුමක් වගේ එකක්. දැන් මේක අලුතෙන් මේක එස්ටැබ්ලිෂ් කරන්න ඕනේ. දැන් අයිස් ටික මේ වගේ නම් මේ කුට්ටිය ඝන බවට පත් කරන්න ඕනේ මේ විදිහට දිගටම පවත්වාගෙන යන්න. So there are certain strategies you can use. For example, you can come up with new organization structures, right? If you have introduced some new department, divisions, you draw this new organized structure. Then you can another thing you can do is you can come up with new job description. දැන් ආයතන සේවකයන් කාර්යයන් වල වෙනස්කම් වුණා නම් එහෙම අලුත් job description අපිට දෙන්න පුළුවන් ඒ අයට. Then you can celebrate success. අපිට සේවකත් එක්ක පුළුවන් මේ ජයග්‍රහණය සමරන්න, මේ අලුත් වෙනස්කම කිරීම සාර්ථක වීම පිළිබඳ ජයග්‍රහණය සමරන්න පුළුවන්. Celebrate success, right? Those are some of the strategies. Even another one is reward. People right who apply these new practices can be rewarded. then people will be encouraged to continue with these new practices, right? මෙන්න මේ වගේ strategies ටිකක් තමයි අපි අනුගමනය කරන්න පුළුවන්, right? So you can talk about this model in this particular scenario. Untrace. So process of finding a way to get people to end their resistance to change. This is achieved by finding way to strengthen the driving process for change or to weaken the restraining process that resists change. I explained that one, or a combination of the two. Movement, making the change, it includes not just making the changes to the operation and activities, but making changes to the thought, feeling and behavior of the people affected. Then rephrase, establishing the change as a new mind sets. So you can talk about this model in relation to this organization also, right? We look at about what the examiner tell on this. 1D. 6 to 5 marks he is suggesting for what scenario? Propose the steps and strategies for managing the changing process of a Sky Garment Limited by adapting to Lewin's model for change management or Kotter's model for change. So I use this Lewin model here. You come up with the model, sound model. Then 4 to 3. Propose steps and strategies for managing the changing process of a Sky Garment Limited without adapting to accepted model for change management. 4 to 3 marks. In there we come up with steps and strategies for managing the changing process of a Sky Garment Limited without adapting the accepted model for change management. අපි නිකන් කතා කරනවා හැබැයි මොඩල් එකක් අපි පාවිච්චි කරන්නේ නැහැ. Then 2, propose some steps of managing the change without following any model for change management. මෙතනදී නිකන් පොඩි කිහිපයක් විතරක් දැනුම් දීමක් කරනවා, හඳුනා ගන්නවා. හැබැයි හරි මොඩල් එකක් යූස් කරන්නේ නැහැ. 1 mark, insufficient and poor attempt but propose some action to managing the change. Then 0, weak analysis and irrelevant to the given task. So weak 1. Right. Then with that we can complete part D of the questions. Question number 1 is complete with that. Then we can move to the question number 2. Question number 2. So what is the requirement here? We'll look at about the requirement first. So mapping the existing stakeholders and deciding way of dealing with them. Part A, 8 mark has been allocated. So in there, what you have to do actually, you have to identify the existing stakeholders. No, here look at this. If you are planning to start the factory operation with a special permission of the government, how do you manage the stakeholders' influence? You need to map the existing stakeholders for our business before restart the business operation and decide how to deal with them. So, you have to use this Mendelow's matrix in this scenario. Then second one, what they require, discuss the issues to be considered at initial stage and recommend the appropriate B2C model for e-commerce. You have to identify what are the issues and you have to come up with the appropriate B2C model. Then C, evaluate the potential market and recommend the appropriate type of entry mode. You evaluate potential market and recommend the appropriate type of entry mode. You identify what is the best entry mode for these organizations. Right. So, we will go through the facts given also. Question number 2, Herbal Ceylon Private Limited is a leading herbal medicine manufacturer in Sri Lanka. The company has started in 2012 and specialized in producing and distributing herbal beauty care product to the domestic market. Now, some information is given about the company. Herbal Ceylon Private Limited HCL is a leading herbal medicine manufacturer in Sri Lanka. They are manufacturing herbal products. The company has started in 2012. This company has started in 2012, that means 8-year-old company, and specialize in producing and distributing herbal beauty care product to the domestic market. So, they have specialized in producing and distributing herbal beauty care product to the domestic market. The owner of the company is Dr. Gunawardana, who is currently living in Australia, and all the business operations are handled by Mr. Naveen Pranandu from Sri Lanka. And the owner of the company is Dr. Gunawardana, who is currently living in Australia, and all the business operations are handled by Mr. Naveen Pranandu from Sri Lanka. The owner living in Australia and now who is handling Naveen Pranandu is handling the business. During the beginning of COVID-19 pandemic, HCL introduced a new herbal tablet named Immuna. So, to capitalize the opportunity created from this COVID-19 pandemic, they introduced a new herbal tablet, that is name is Immuna, for improving the immunity of people, and it was rapidly becoming popular among local communities. However, all business operations were temporarily stopped since last month due to the factory and head office be located in a lockdown area of Gampaha district. Now they have to stop the operations, right? What is the reason behind that? The Gampaha district, their main factory is located at so due to the lockdown they had to stop the operation temporarily. Currently, many customers are demanding Immuna via telephone and email, but many people want to buy this one, right? But HCL does not have a mechanism to serve product for the current demand. That means they may not have online selling systems. Mr. Naveen had several telephone conversations with Dr. Gunawardana regarding the prevailing situation, and he has agreed to invest money to start online operation in the domestic market. He had a telephone conversation with Dr. Gunawardana regarding the prevailing situation, and he has agreed to invest money to start online operation in the domestic market and expand business into international market. How he has sent the following email by inquiring some matters before making the investment decisions. So, he has sent an email. So, we will see what is included in the body of the email. Dear Naveen, hope you are safe with the prevailing situations. As per the discussion I had with you, I need following clarification before making the investment decision. As per discussion I had with you, I need following clarification before making the investment decision. First one, if we are planning to start the factory operation with a special permission of the government, how do you manage the stakeholders' influence? You need to map the existing stakeholder for our business before restarting the business operation, decide how to deal with them. Right. Part 1, if you are planning to start the factory operation with a special permission of the government, how do you manage the stakeholders' influences? Right. You need to map the existing stakeholders for our business before restarting the business operations. So, here first of all you have to identify the existing stakeholders, then and decide how to deal with them. Then you have to identify how to deal with them. Right. Then second one, if we can develop an online platform for the business to start online operations, what are the issues to be considered at initial stage and what type of a B2C model for e-commerce do you recommend for our business and why? So, it talk about the B2C model. Third one, it talk about how to evaluate the potential market and what is the entry mode. So, we will look at the part 1 here first. If we are planning to start the factory operation with a special permission of the government, how do you manage the stakeholders' influences? You need to map the existing stakeholders for our business before restarting the business operation and decide how to deal with them. So, there are two requirements. First one, map the existing stakeholders. Then next one, decide how to deal with them. Then identify the appropriate strategies to deal with the stakeholders. Yes, if you look at the mark allocation, mapping the stakeholders and decide way of dealing with them. So, what is the theory model we can use? Mendelow's. Right. We can use Mendelov metrics to map the stakeholders. So, we look at about theory part a little bit. So, if you look at about this Mendelov stakeholder mapping, there are two functions performed by this particular model. What are the two functions performed by this particular model? First of all, it helps to identify the stakeholders, right, in 4 categories, right. So, you can identify different stakeholders and then you can put them into these 4 categories. Then the second thing is you can identify the appropriate strategy. And you can identify the appropriate strategy with dealing with them, right. Right, we look at about the model here. If you look at about this model, there are two variables considered when you are mapping the stakeholders. One is level of interest, other one is level of power. Then level of interest, within the level of interest, it has identified two options. Level of interest can be low or high. Then power can be low or high. Accordingly, you have identified, we have identified 4 stakeholder groups. What are the 4 stakeholder group we can identify? Category A, category B, category C and category D. Who is category A? Here category A mean level of interest is low, at the same time power is also low. There are some stakeholders, their level of interest is very low, power is also very low. In other words, they are not much worrying about what is happening in the business, and at the same time they can't much influence on the business activities also. If such stakeholder group is available, we identify them as under the category A group. Then if you look at the category B, there is a small change happening. Category B, the power is same, they do not have much power to improve the business activity, but their interest has been increased. Category B, what happened is their interest is increased, right. Then category C, in their level of interest is low, but power is high, right. Level of interest is low, power is high. Then category D, their level of interest is high, power is also high. They are normally identified as key players, Right. In this analysis, what are the stakeholder parties we can identify? Definitely owner is there, then government also involved, you have to get the permission from government in this scenario, then employees are there, then customers are there, even community you can identify, general public, these are the stakeholder parties we can identify. So, if you take the owner, where we can put him under this particular model, should be category D, no? Yes, key player, as a key player. Then employees, if you look at the employees, employee should be category B. Why? So, if you look at the individual employee interest on the business activity is low, sorry, individual business, their interest is high, but power is very low. දැන් අපි ආයතන සේවකයෙක් ගත්තොත් එහෙම මේ ආයතනයේ කටයුතු කරේ විශාල අල්මකින් කටයුතු කරනවා. මොකද එයා ආයතනයේ මත තමයි එයා පදනම් වෙලා තියෙන්නේ. It is depending on the organization. Therefore, his interest is very high. But their power is low. In a large organization, one employee can do little, right? The most of the employees power is very low. Therefore, employee in this organization can be categorized under category B. හැබැයි බොහොම පරිස්සම් මේගොල්ලෝවත් handle කරන්න වෙනවා. Why? So they can form union and they may try to increase their power, no? Yes. Then government in under normal circumstances, government can be categorized under C. Right? Normally, government power is high, but under normal circumstances, they do not give much attention to the activities of the organizations. Then community, their attention may be low and their power is also may be low, right? Right. So at the beginning I told you this model can be used for two purposes. One is to categorize the stakeholders into four groups. What is the second thing I have mentioned? To identify the appropriate strategy in dealing with each stakeholder group. Identify the appropriate strategy in dealing with each stakeholder group. If you look at about the second part, what about the category A? Do you want to put much attempt to treat them? No. You can put minimal effort to satisfy their requirement. Why? Because their level of interest is low, at the same time power is low. අපි ඒතර කැටගරි A එකේ එක යම්කිසි ස්ටේක්හෝල්ඩර් ගෲප් එකක් හඳුනාගත්තොත් එහෙම අපි ඒ අය කෙරෙහි වැඩි දුර අවධානයක් යොමු කරන්නේ නැහැ. ඒකට හේතුව තමයි ඒ අයට ආයතන කටයුතු පිළිබඳව උනන්දුවක් නැහැ, වැඩි උනන්දුවක් නැහැ. ඒ වගේම ඒ අයට වැඩි බලයකුත් නැහැ ආයතන කටයුතු වලට බලපෑම් කරන්න. Then category B, what is the appropriate strategy? Better to inform when company doing something. Keep informed. Right? Why you want to inform them? Because they have high interest about the organization activities. No? මේගොල්ලෝ ආයතන කටයුතු කෙරෙහි දැඩි උනන්දුවකින් කටයුතු කරන හින්දා ආයතනයේ මොකක් හරි කරනකොට මෙයට දැනුම් දීලා කරන එක තමයි වඩාත්ම යෝග්‍ය උපාය මාර්ගය බවට පත් වෙන්නේ. Right? Then category C, that should be treated with care. Why that should be treated with care? At any time they can move to category D. They can increase their interest and can move to category D. Therefore, the appropriate strategy is to keep satisfy their requirement. Then category D, category D is the most important stakeholder group. That's why we identify them as key players. So normally, right, whatever we do should be acceptable to this particular group, right. So, you can't do anything if this group is not going to accept what you are doing. Therefore, they should accept whatever you do. That should be the appropriate strategy. Category A, minimum effort; B, inform; C, satisfy; D, acceptable. Right. In the given scenario, we identify few stakeholders group. Right. Here, before moving to that one, theory part is given again. Here, we discuss that one. Right. Key players are found in segment D. We identify that one. Senior management should take the view of these key stakes into very careful consideration when making decisions. So, acceptable is the appropriate strategy. Whatever you do should be acceptable to this particular group. Segment C, stakeholders in this segment must be treated with care. There is a risk that they might move to segment D. What is the appropriate strategy? They should therefore be kept satisfied. Segment B, their views may be important in influencing more powerful stakeholders, perhaps by lobbying. They can increase their power perhaps by lobbying. For example, employee can form an union and influence the activities. They should therefore be kept informed. Segment A, management do not have to give much or even any consideration to stakeholders in this group. They are categorized as minimal effort stakeholders. Right. So, who are the existing stakeholders? Owner, customers, government, suppliers, local community. I have missed out one party. What is the other one? Employees. No, employees. Then how we are going to put them under this Mendelov matrix? Owner. Where we can put owner? Should be category D. Owner should be under category D, since their level of interest is high and the power is high. Then customers, small individual customers can be categorized under category B. Their level of interest is high, power is low. But if you have a main customer, will say that customer purchase higher percentage of the total sales, and that scenario category D, they should be identified as a key players. But we assume here most of the customers buy only a small percentage, therefore category B. Then government should be category C. Normally their level of interest is low, but power is high. Then suppliers should be category B. Level of interest is high, power is low. Category B, right. It based on your assumption, right? I assume that here there are thousands of suppliers from whom we can purchase the required material. Therefore, each party influence is very low, right, since we have more options. Then local community, under normal circumstances, category A, level of interest low, power is low. Then employees should be category B, level of interest is high, power is low. Majority of employees come under this particular group, except like CEO. CEO normally power is also high, right. So, with that we can complete part A. We will check what the examiners say on this. So, 8 to 7 mark, clearly identifying the different categories of stakeholders in the given scenario based on Mendelov's matrix and recommend the best ways of dealing with each stakeholder category. So, clearly identifying the different categories of stakeholders in the given scenario based on Mendelov's matrix. Yes, we also use the Mendelov's matrix, and we identify 6 stakeholder group and recommend the best way of dealing with each stakeholder category. So, we know the appropriate strategy also, the owner we identify under key payers. So, whatever you do should be accessible. Customers, small customers, we have to inform when you are doing something, since we identify them under the group B. Government, you have to satisfy their requirement, since we identify them under group C. Suppliers, we assume under the B. We have to inform when you are doing something. Local community A, you can put minimum effort. Then employees, so should inform, since we identify them under group B. Right. Then 6 to 5 marks, clearly identifying the different categories of stakeholders in the given scenario based on Mendelov metric, but no clear recommendation given to explain the best way of dealing with each stakeholder category. You just identify the stakeholders correctly by using the Mendelov metric, but you are not giving recommendations. In that scenario, you can get around 6 to 5 marks. Then 4 to 3 marks, categorizing stakeholders and recommending strategies without following the principles of Mendelov metrics. You just categorize them, but no much explanations, no application of the Mendelov metrics, and no recommendations also. Then 2 to 1 mark, insufficient and poor attempt, but and discuss some valid point about the deal with the stakeholders. 0, weak discussion and irrelevant to the given task. Right. Then we will move to part B of the questions. Right. Part B, if we can develop an online platform for the business to start online operations, what are the issues to be considered at initial stage, and what type of a B2C model for e-commerce do you recommend for our business and why? So, look at this question carefully. If we can develop an online platform for the business to start online operation, what are the issues to be considered at initial stage, and what type of a B2C model for e-commerce do you recommend for our business? There are 2 requirements, no? What is the first requirement? What are the issues to be considered at initial stage? When you are starting online business, what are the issues to be considered? The second one, what type of a B2C model for e-commerce do you recommend for our business? What type model you are going to recommend? Right, you have to give the reason and why you recommend this. So, we look at about theory relevant with this part. Right. So, what are the issues to be considered normally when you are starting an e-commerce operations? Issues to consider, there are few issues to be considered. So, examiner is trying to test this theory part with you. We look at about this. First one, value propositions. How will the e-commerce arrangement provide value for the customer? In this scenario, you have to check how value can be given to the customer. So, in this scenario, value can be given by delivering the good to the customer's locations. That is one way you can create value. Anything else? Then other thing is, second thing is, customer can easily buy the product online by using a credit card or any other card. So, at any time in a day, 24-hour access, there is another way you can give value to the customer, right. So, when you are applying right the online model, first of all you have to identify how value can be created. I found 2 examples in this business, you can tell that one. One is you can give a customer the opportunity to buy the good online at any time, then you can deliver the good to the customer's location also. 2 ways you can tell that one. Then next one is revenue. revenue, how will the business generate revenue for the company? You have to think how we are going to create revenue for the company. So, what is the way? Normally, revenue will be created from the purchase price, no? Right. So, customer has to pay to buy the products. Then market opportunity, that's the third point. The company should consider markets and segmentations. What are the commercial opportunities that exist in this market? What is the potential size of the market? You have to look at about the commercial opportunity exist in this market. For example, by applying this online model, not only in Sri Lanka, you can expand the business into other countries also. And there is a huge demand for this herbal product. For the Immuna product also, there will be high demand these days. So, there is a high commercial opportunity available. You can identify the potential size of the market also, right. Then competitive environment, how many competitors are already operating in the market with a similar business model? You have to look at other competitors. Who are the other competitors in the marketplace, right. So, you have to identify that also, right, but the facts are not given on that. You can just mention that you have to identify the other competitors in the market. Then competitive advantage, the next factor you have to consider, what can the company offer to customers that competitors cannot? You have to think how we can make the competitive advantage in the marketplace. For example, what are the additional benefit we are giving to the customers, right. For example, others may not deliver the good, but we may deliver the good, right, like that, right. So, we have to identify how we can create a competitive advantage. Or we will say others also apply the same. We may think about some other way. For example, we will say short delivery time, within short period of time we deliver. උදාහරණයක් විදිහට අපි හිතමුකෝ දැන් අනිත් අයට සතියක් යනකොට නම් බාන් ඩිලිවර් කරන්න ඕඩර් කළා අපි දවසෙන් ඩිලිවර් කරනවා ඒ වගේ. For example, daras.lk, no, so they have a very good business model, no, they deliver the good within short period of time. So, like that you can suggest competitive advantage. Then market strategy, it's another issue you have to consider. How does the company intend to enter the market and attract customers? So, how we are going to enter the market and attract customers? For example, you may right come up with advertising campaign, right, and you may try to offer the good at a lower price, right. That may be some of the strategy you apply. Then organization of operation, how will the company organize the work to deliver the service? What changes are needed to operational procedure? So, now existing organization we may not have some relevant parts, no. So, you have to identify maybe new divisions who deal with this online business. Then management team, who will be responsible for managing the operations? Is it this same guy is doing this one, or are we going to appoint a new person? You have to decide that, right. So, here I do not think that this Navin will have enough time, no. Navin is the manager, no. You may have to find somebody else to manage the operation of these operations. So, management team should be decided, right. I think we have answered for the part 1 of this. Issues we have considered. Then what is the appropriate business model? So, what is the theory part exam is testing here? These are the different business model you can apply. So, there are 5 business model we discuss: advertising model, intermediary model, then merchant model, manufacturer model and subscription model. So, on the advertising model you provide a product free of charge, right. You get the revenue from the advertising revenue like Google, Facebook. Intermediate model, here you collect data about consumers and their purchasing habit and sell this information to other business and get the income. Then merchant model, company use the internet to sell their goods or services, right. Then manufacturer model, manufacturer who directly sell its product to the customer through its website. Subscription model, consumers has to pay to access to website. So, what are the appropriate model here? Not advertising model, intermediary model, no. Subscription also not suitable for this type of products. So, most appropriate one is the manufacturer model. Here this company himself can directly sell product to the consumers. A merchant model may be another suggestion, but manufacturer model is the most appropriate one. So, what they can do is they can sell the product online and they can make arrangement to deliver the product to the customer place also. Right, your answer should be manufacturer model. The company themselves, right, will sell the product direct to the consumers through their website, and they will do the required arrangement to deliver the goods. Right, manufacturer model is the suggestion here. So, we will look at about what the examiners say. So, 8 to 7 mark, comprehensively discuss the issues to be considered at initial stage of introducing online business in HCL and recommend the appropriate B2C model. Example, merchant model or manufacturer model. He is also come up with the same, but I believe manufacturer model is more appropriate. For e-commerce, appropriate to the given scenario, we discuss the issues and we suggest the manufacturer model. If you have done that one, then you can get 8 to 7 marks. Then 6 to 5 marks, discuss some issues to be considered at initial stage of introducing online business in HCL and recommend a B2C model without following the standard model or model which is not fully matched with the given scenario. You just discuss the issues properly, but you are not coming up with the correct model. 4 to 3 mark, discuss some issues and e-commerce model in general without following appropriate theoretical background. You just talk about the issues without proper theory. 2 to 1, insufficient and poor attempt, but discuss some valid point about the issues and e-commerce model or either one of those. 0, weak discussion and irrelevant to the given task. So, we will move to the part 3 of the questions. If we are to expand our business into international market, how do you evaluate the potential market and what type of entry mode do you recommend to our business at the initial stage and why? Right, if you look at about these questions, what are the requirement here? Actually, there are two requirement. One is evaluate the potential market, that is the first requirement. Then the second one is to identify the appropriate entry mode. Right. So, what are the model you can use to evaluate this? Look at about theory part. Yes. So, evaluating international market. International markets are complex dynamic environment. Therefore, before entering a new market, an organization will need to carry out extensive research to assess whether the target market is likely to prove profitable. A range of models have been developed over time to help companies assess the viability of different market. There are two main models you can use, right? The case framework and the 12C framework, right? So, what is more appropriate? 12C is a little bit tough, no? Right? There are 12Cs, country, consideration, culture, choices, consumption, contractual obligation, commitment, channels, communications, capacity to pay, currency and caveat. So, I prefer with the case framework because we have to apply only 4 and it much easier to apply also, right. We look at about what is case framework, theory aspect here. Before any organization can successfully undertake expansion into a new country, it need to consider the difference between its home country home markets and the target countries and take those differences into account when designing its strategy. So, under this model we look at about the difference between home market and the target foreign markets. Right. The case framework identify a range of issues that an organization need to address when approaching the subject of international expansion into a specific country, and consider the differences that may exist between our home market and the target market under the following 4 headings. So, we try to identify the difference between home country and the target country. In this scenario, Sri Lanka. Then target country, what is the target country we can consider here? They have not given any specific reference, no. For example, assume Australia, since this owner is living in there, he may select Australia as the first country, he can sell the products. In that scenario, we look at about differences based on that, cultural, India. So, what we are going to do? Social difference between 2 countries. What about Sri Lanka and Australia, for example? Sri Lanka is more traditional value based country, but Australia is more western type country, you can state that one. Then administrative, India we are going to look at about the legal and political differences. Australia is more democratic country compared to Sri Lanka. Then in the laws there may be some differences. Then geographic, that's another one we can look at. Address physical aspect of distance between 2 countries. So, distance is too much between Sri Lanka and Australia. Then economics, difference related to income, purchasing power and disposable income. For example, in Sri Lanka per capita income is very low, but Australia per capita income is very high. So, you can talk on those things. What the next requirement of the questions? What is the appropriate entry mode to this business? That is the next requirement, no? What type of entry mode do you recommend? This is based on internationalization, last topic in your syllabus. What is the appropriate mode? What do you think here? This is overseas productions. Is it profitable to go to Australia and manufacture and sell it? I do not think so. Is it export? I think initial stage we can suggest the export strategy. So, from Sri Lanka, good will be export to foreign country. So, we can suggest export strategy, right. So, we will look at about what the examiner tell on this. Eight to 7 marks, comprehensively discuss the ways of evaluating one or more identified potential international market by adapting to an appropriate model, cage, 12Cs, Porter's diamond model, and recommend an appropriate type of entry mode at the initial stage of the company. Yes, he is suggesting to apply cage, 12Cs or Porter's diamond model. So, we apply the cage model and explain and recommend an appropriate type of entry mode. We suggest export strategy as the appropriate strategy. Then 6 to 5 marks, discuss the ways of evaluating one or more in 5 potential international market without adapting to an appropriate model. So, we did the first part and we did the second thing also, but here if you you may get only 6 to 5 mark if you are not applying appropriate model. You just talk about the point and recommend entry mode at the initial stage not fully match with the given scenario. You suggest inappropriate entry mode. For example, you say overseas productions, that may not be the ideal at the initial stage, right. 4 to 3 mark, discuss ways of evaluating one or more identify potential international market without following theoretical background and recommend entry strategies in general. Discuss ways of evaluating one or more identify potential international market without following theoretical background and recommend entry strategies in general. You just evaluate without identifying a proper theoretical background, and so you generally talk about the strategy without identifying one proper strategy. 2 to 1 mark, insufficient and poor attempt, but discuss some valid point about the evaluating the international market and general recommendation about the entry mode. It's a very poor attempt, right? 0 weak, discussion and relevant to the given task. So with that we complete part 3 of the questions. So with that we can complete our discussions on the paper, and thank you very much.